Let's talk about Star Wars. Welcome into a special episode of Zollypod. We wanted to get this out to talk about Ahsoka because Carson, as you know, we are big Star Wars fans. It's how we met. I'm your host, Preston Moore, by the way. If you're coming back to listen to this episode, you probably already knew that. Carson, introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. And yes, it's true. We're talking about Star Wars, even though I think we bring it up at least once an episode in reference and comparison or anything else, or say we're going to watch it, or it's always something. But this is this little special episode because a big Star Wars show on Disney Plus, Ahsoka, which is a culmination of many TV shows, many episodes, many characters, many stories. It all ended on Disney Plus this past Wednesday, I believe. And we're
Wednesday,
yeah,
or Tuesday night.
If you want to get specific, I forget that the change happened after we all complained for 3 years that it was going to air at not midnight. Thank goodness.
I know. That was so annoying. But anyways, let's just dive into it. Ahsoka just finished. And this is something that you and I have talked about plenty. You mentioned we bring it up every single episode almost. If not every episode, we bring up Star Wars. It's how we met, through our shared love of Star Wars. And this show, to me, I wanted to like it. I'll put it that way. It's the most I've ever wanted to like a Star Wars show. Ahsoka has been my favorite Star Wars character for the better half of the last couple years, at least since season 7 of the Clone Wars came out. She's been my favorite. So I was very excited for this show. It was my most anticipated new age Star Wars thing whenever they announced when Kathleen Kennedy went up against a green screen and they announced like 14 different Star Wars shows and movies, maybe half of which will come out. Who knows?
I was there on the investor
when they
call.
did that.
I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, that Ahsoka was like my number one most anticipated show out of all of those. So I'm very excited that it happened, and I wanted to like it a lot. But I gotta say, after the last 2 episodes specifically, I don't think it stuck the landing for me. I was hoping it was building towards something that it ended up not being building toward. Carson, what were your overall thoughts on it?
I think your last sentence there is key. It's so fascinating now that I've seen all these episodes, and I think back on my previous podcast I used to do, talking about when the news got announced that this show was happening, and we're like, why isn't it going to be an animation, and why is it just an Ahsoka show? Why can't it just be encompassing Sabine, Hera, everybody? And of course, it does do that here. Hera's in this show, Sabine's in this show, Chopper's in this show, and Ezra's in this show. So you have everybody from Rebels in this continuing story, and it does give you the next moments in the plot of where's Ezra, and are we going to be reunited with Ezra? But weirdly enough, we start the show, and now I'm thinking back, it's like,
spoilers if you have not seen.
Yeah, and I don't know why you'd be listening to this.
I want to get that out of the way now. Spoiler episode, yes. Anyway, continue. I had to interrupt you just to get that out there.
And I feel like Ahsoka, the show Ahsoka, like already has a natural spoiler guard, because anybody outside of the fandom that I talk to is confused about what this show even is, and it's like the most non-general audience show in a while. And
is that not in and of itself an indictment on the show? Because to me, if I hadn't watched the Clone Wars and Rebels going into this show, I don't know why I would have cared about any of it. Frankly, the biggest hook for me, the whole first half of the show, was the reveal of Thrawn and Ezra. It was waiting to see those two characters, not only their translation into live action, which there's plenty to be said there, but also just to see them back on screen. Where are they? What have they been up to? And then we get there and it's okay, we saw them. And don't get me wrong, I like Lars Mikkelsen as Thrawn. The design is a little bit weird, but I mean, Dooku from live action to animated is a little bit weird. I think just creating a character design in animation, it's so much easier to create something that our eyes could never see, obviously, compared to live action. It has to be something physically possible in a lot of senses, unless it's crazy CGI. And with Thrawn, his character design really is created for animation, and they had to switch that over to live action. And when you hear Lars Mikkelsen's Thrawn voice, it's like you're immediately immediately transported back to the days of watching Rebels and this intense, terrifying Grand Admiral. I love his voice. I don't think you could have gone to another actor. I wouldn't have wanted them to, but the design was weird. It was off-putting at first, but again, we see Ezra and Thrawn, and then it's just after that, the intrigue really took a downhill slope for me, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's interesting. What I was trying to set up in the beginning there was like, so you jump into this show and or time jumped from, I guess you could say, where Ahsoka's appearances in The Mandalorian. I can't remember the specific timeline of when we see her in The Mandalorian versus when we see her in Ahsoka. And obviously we have the continued thing with the witch lady who then become Morgan. Yes, thank you
Morgan Elsbeth.
Yes,
who, for the record, I really never cared about.
She was a conduit.
I don't know if that's my fault, but I just didn't. I felt like I was being asked to care about her in a way that I simply didn't.
Yes. Anywho, all that being said, we get into this show, and all of a sudden we're told that Ahsoka was training Sabine and all these different things, and that Ahsoka is obviously hunting for Thrawn, but she's also struggling with different things. And we have a great setup, right? And then we have these villains set up that are the mirror image of Ahsoka and Sabine. Baylan is if Ahsoka was like more jaded and turned to the dark, and the opposite of Ahsoka in that way. And then who's the younger Padawan character? Shin. Yes.
Her name's Shin.
She is just ferocious and obviously wants to prove herself in the world and trying to find her place type of thing. So like Sabine, she's longing for something, but in a completely different way. So their clash is interesting. So you have all these things set up. And then, like you said, it turns into sort of a chase for the thing that's going to open to hyperspace. And then we're going to go and do that. And then we're going to go do that. And don't get me wrong, there's some great moments in this show. I thought the Anakin stuff was executed pretty well. The whole episode, I really did enjoy those flashbacks. Character-wise, I think it made sense for a person who such a significant part of her life was this journey with her master. And obviously now she has Sabine, and so she's contextualizing all this stuff that all these lessons, and also just the guilt of who Anakin became. And then I think there's one line of Baylan or Thrawn or somebody like, are you more like him than you thought? And I'm like, I wish we would have explored that more. That's the biggest way I could put about this show is there's a lot of great ideas bursting at the seams. I just wish they would have developed them a little more. Because oddly, this show is, I think we were talking off air, is like, it feels like a Clone Wars arc stretched out to 8 episodes, where there's simultaneously, there's so much time that we spend in this show, like literally, but it also feels like there's a less going on, or things that are less developed than they could have been. And our major villains are, Thrawn's the major villain, obviously that's the main antagonist, but I really thought they were going to do something really specific with Baylan and Shin, and that really gets pushed by the wayside. And especially if I'm thinking
Baylan and Shin really just take a back seat in those last 2 episodes.
100%.
They really do. And I know that the buildup was all about Thrawn, but man, as far as I'm concerned, for me, Baylan was by far the most interesting character in this show. I wanted to know where he came from. I wanted to know his backstory, and I really wanted to know his intentions. And I never really felt like I got him. I felt like he was, yes, trying to help Morgan get to Thrawn, obviously. But I also, they really build up that he has ulterior motives. Why hasn't he killed Sabine? There were a lot of times during the course of the show where they hinted that he had other intentions, that he wanted to do more, or that there was something deeper going on with him, and he didn't care all that much about Thrawn or getting Thrawn necessarily. It seemed like he had more, I don't know. And I think that's something that they'll definitely explore in season 2 if they can find a way to. Rest in peace to Ray Stevenson. I think he gave, and it has nothing to do with his passing, but I just think he gave the best performance of the show, quite frankly. Him, and I'm blanking on his name, but the actor who they cast to play Ezra is phenomenal.
Who is literally,
love him.
I was so shocked. Like, he is born to play Ezra. Like, uncanny. Like, I was just like, oh my God, that's Ezra. And I'm so glad that they found that, because that really did work.
I think it was definitely the best translation from animation to live action. That guy, I'm gonna look up his name right now so I don't keep saying that guy. It's Iman something. He was unbelievable. Iman Esfandi. I hope I didn't butcher that, but man, was he good. He really did feel like he was born to play Ezra. And frankly, I hate to say it, but by the end of the finale, I was kind of wishing it had been an Ezra show. There was a part of me that was like, man, this kid is so good. I say kid, he's probably older than me. This guy is so good, and he's perfect as Ezra, and he's very intriguing. And I feel like I'm watching Ezra. That's one thing that, to me, Rosario Dawson, she's a different Ahsoka than we've come used to with Ashley Eckstein over the years with Clone Wars and Rebels. And that's something that through The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, her appearances there, I really tried to come around on Rosario Dawson, and I did in a way. I started to like her a little bit more, but I also had to appreciate that she was going to be a different take on the character, because there really was no replacing Ashley Eckstein, her voice, and frankly, what the animators did with Ahsoka in Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah, and I think what also makes this tough is, and I've debated this previously too, is like, we've seen so much of Ahsoka's life. So my entire thing with this show is like, she's nearing the end of her arc in terms of like narrative, like not even usefulness, but just as much as you can develop a character. She's lived through the Clone Wars. She's lived through all of these different conflicts, and she's learned about Anakin being Vader and all these different things. Like, there's so many little milestones that we have conclusively seen in several, whether it's books, movies, TV shows, and whatever it is. It's all been developed since this character was invented, for 15 plus years, or however long Ahsoka's been since the inception of the Clone Wars. And so with this show, it was going to be so interesting to me, like, how are they going to change this character? Like, she is like almost in her final form, stoic.
I don't know that they did.
I don't know if they did. And obviously the big setup in the beginning is she doesn't trust Sabine in the beginning of the show, and she doesn't know if their relationship is going to work out. And then by the end, they switch places, and the big payoff is supposed to be, we're in the right place, and you grew, Sabine, and I trust you. But they're separated for half the show. And so like all that development that I hope to see, them being side by side and like developing and getting past their conflict, and like you
need these interconnected characters, but interconnecting moments between the characters.
And by the way, we're just like, we finally get confirmed that like Sabine's whole family got wiped out in the Night of Thousand Tears or whatever. That's just like a throwaway line by Balin that like your parents died, and that hadn't been confirmed up until this point, I believe. I wish there would have been more development about Sabine's like apprehension with everything. I'm sure that affected her anyway, but that just like, none of that came through. Is like, she's just like frustrated. There's the big decision that she's gonna, like, episode 4 is really where this show peaked for me, because you get this amazing dramatic moment between Sabine and Balin, and the Ahsoka stuff is great, and everything is great in episode 4, and then it just drags on for a couple episodes before we get back to the tension of what the stakes are and actually getting back to whatever Thrawn's return is going to mean for the galaxy. And so it's just a very interesting...
What does it mean? That's, if you're going to hype up Thrawn returning, and I want to be very clear, I said Ahsoka was my favorite Star Wars character for years, and she was before the show. I don't know that she still is. I think I can confidently say Rebels and Clone Wars Ahsoka is my favorite character. It feels like there was a little, I don't feel the connection with the live action interpretation that I did with the animated. That being said, Thrawn is one of my favorite Star Wars characters as well. He's been a top 10 Star Wars character for me. He is probably my favorite Star Wars villain outside of Kylo Ren. I love Thrawn, and I didn't care about him either. And they hype up the whole show. Thrawn's returning. This is really bad. Thrawn is going to return, and it's really bad. Why? Did I miss something? I didn't really ever feel like Thrawn returning was much of a threat. The only reason that I felt like Thrawn returning was such a bad thing is because I had seen Rebels.
Yeah.
And I watched this show thinking about it from the lens of having seen Clone Wars, having seen Rebels, and knowing these characters. And if I didn't know the things I knew going into it, I think I wouldn't have cared. I don't know why anyone is given a reason to care about a lot of these things. Why? I don't know why we would care about bringing Ezra home if we hadn't seen Rebels.
Well, and at the end, doesn't they load up all those things? And is that like an army that is it because they go to Dathomir? Is it a bunch of like witches in those boxes at the end? I don't know. Is that supposed to be setting up like an army that he has?
And you can set that up at the end of the show, but if I didn't care for the first 8 episodes, you finally set up why I need to care next season, but I didn't care for the first 8 episodes why he was coming back. And that to me was just, I don't know. I liked a lot of the ideas that they wanted to go for, but I think they just whiffed on a lot of it. I think that there's a lot of plot development and character development that goes unspoken in this series. And if you have great actors who can do facial acting extremely well and a great director who can bring out the best in those actors, then you can have those unspoken emotions, those unspoken, maybe even plot points. You can have those unfold without any dialogue to hold the audience's hand through that. But I don't think that they had that. I don't think that they had the strength in terms of the performances in a lot of ways to do unspoken storytelling.
I think it's all there in different ways, but you and I were talking, again, the thing we were just mentioning off air because we're impatient and can't wait to actually speak when we're recording the podcast.
I know.
About
I hop on this Zoom call and I start talking about what we're supposed to talk about on the podcast.
All the time. Every single time.
We get on the podcast and then I'm just like, we mentioned this before.
But the thing is, this feels like just this show in general could have been like a 20 episode animated Clone Wars style show where it just continues on and goes into all these things, or it could have been a 2-hour movie.
Really could have been animated.
And I just, that's my frustration with this. It feels like it's in the wrong medium. Like, I love Dave Filoni and the way he's developing as a live action filmmaker. And I generally do think he's been growing as a director, and that's phenomenal.
He's gotten better.
But also, he's done so well and has learned how to serve storytelling and just like the narrative mythos of all this stuff that George taught him in animation. And it's so beautiful to watch when it does hit. And like, I feel like with live action, he's reverted in his career a little bit, where now he's having to learn a completely different medium to try and tell these stories. And I don't necessarily think that helps execution wise with these shows. And I hate to say it because I want him to succeed, and he does succeed at a lot of things. And every show gets closer and closer to like where I'm like, I can see where you're going for, Dave. And maybe by the time we get to, I don't know if there's going to be a season 2 of Ahsoka. It surely sets one up. I know Dave's supposed to have a movie or whatever it's going to be, setting up Thrawn as the ultimate villain of that. I don't know. People have speculated that it's going to be a riff on a Legends sort of story that's going to be retrofitted into the Mandalorian characters and Thrawn and all of that happening in one movie. So maybe by the time we get to that movie, I will see the path that all of this has set down, both Filoni with his animated stuff and then Favreau coming in and their sort of combined thing going into this full movie. But so far, it's been a roller coaster of just up, down, great moments, overall execution just lacking. And I think you wanted to bring up too, just like visually, I think this show struggles a lot of the just like the sets. It's like, it's very contained for a show that's supposed to be like this massive scale. I think, the 3 of them, like with that lightsaber fight with the dead zombies, and then even
which, who cares? I'm sorry. Zombie stormtroopers sounds so cool, but why do I care? Like when they were raised back to life and Ahsoka was like, Ezra, have you ever seen this? And Ezra was like, no, this is new. I don't feel like they're threatened at all. because stormtroopers have become such a joke over the years. I don't remember the last time we saw a stormtrooper successfully take on a Jedi, or a group of stormtroopers for that matter. I really, maybe I have a short-term memory. I don't know, but I don't feel threatened by the stormtroopers to begin with. Then when they're raised back from the dead, what do we have? We have the same stormtroopers who I don't feel threatened by, moving at 1/2 the speed that they moved by before, and now they're taking on 3 Force-sensitive people, one of whom is the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, one of the strongest Jedi to ever exist. Why do I care about the slow stormtroopers who are back from the dead? It's a cool idea, but I don't feel threatened at all.
Yeah, because we have the comedy of, oh, they've never done this before, Ezra, like, haha, but like, whatever. Anyways.
Yeah, but now they're slower and easier to kill. Like, all you got to do is down them for a little bit and then run away. Why do we care? Why does it? Zombie stormtroopers is such a cool idea if it's executed well. But when I'm watching it and I feel no threat at all.
You're like, why can't this take place in the dark or at dusk or anywhere that's not a gray South Dakota? Why is this in a completely other universe and we land in its so gray, barren South Dakota? It can be anything. Gray. It could be Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for all I care. You could give me some color. There's got to be some. Maybe
you could make it a jungle.
Maybe the physics are different. Maybe gravity is different. Maybe something is weird about this planet. Literally nothing. There's wolves. That's it.
Big wolves and little turtle people who they were love, adorable. I will say they
are no hate. Let's put that.
They got me there. they always have to add the porgs. They always have to add some little alien that's gonna.
They're like little Koopa Troopas, man, and I love them.
Those little guys. I want to see them in every single thing for the next ever. I want to see them. More of that,
dude. They're like little, and they like circle up. And they have that like battle technique because they don't really have weapons.
Let's make them colorful next time and make them interesting. That's back to the visual thing. Like, what is going on with that? Why does it have to be that way? I understand we have. When we're filming a show using the volume technology where you have giant LED screens around you and a little bit of a physical set, but not much of an extension there, mostly just the giant screens, 360 degrees around you. Super cool technology. I get there are spatial limitations with that. That showed very much in the show.
Drop off. Why do they make the line of the set the drop off of the cliff where I can see Thrawn and the walking floating? Like, why does it do that? Like, why do they do that?
Yeah. That's one thing that I get it. I get there are spatial limitations with it. I think there's a way to work around it. They absolutely should have. But then when I think about the color and the just lack of inspiration on all fronts with this new galaxy, which is something Star Wars really has not done much of. There is a lot of potential there to finally breathe some new life into this franchise in a way that really hasn't been done since The Last Jedi. I loved Andor, but it also, I don't think it necessarily breathed a whole lot of new stuff into Star Wars.
And that's what I want to say about this is there's so much happening in this show, yet nothing. We get to the other galaxy and we stay at this one planet the whole time.
And why? It's not that much different from the planet they left from.
Why?
I saw a quote from, and I know you've read more Star Wars books than I have, so you may be better off to speak on this than me, but a quote from Timothy Zahn, who I believe wrote the Thrawn books. Was he the creator of Thrawn? I think he was. I'm leaning toward that.
I'm leaning towards 80%. Yes.
If he didn't, I know he wrote most, if not, I know he wrote at least 80 to 90% of the original Thrawn material. Yeah. Thrawn might have been creative beforehand, but then he wrote most of Thrawn.
Heir to the Empire in 1991.
So Thrawn's been around a long time. This guy knows Thrawn better than anything. And his idea, he was asked this a couple years ago before this show was in existence, before it was even in production. He was asked, what is your idea for how you would put Ezra and Thrawn right now? What would you say they've been up to? And he said, I feel like they would have this weird little love-hate buddy cop situation going on. I don't want to say buddy cop. That's probably the wrong phrase, but they have this weird love-hate thing where they have to have each other to survive on this planet because they don't know how to survive wherever they are. And Thrawn wants to get back for bad reasons and Ezra wants to get back for good reasons, but they have to work together even though they don't trust one another and they don't like each other, but they have to work together because of that. And to me, that sounds really interesting. That gives me something new. That gives me a reinvention of the relationships of these characters. And in reality, when we get there, it's about what it was.
It's status quo.
Before.
It's status quo.
Thrawn is bad. He's building an empire. Ezra is...
Imagine we get there and Ezra has met somebody and he doesn't want to leave now. Imagine Sabine gets there and Ezra doesn't want to leave.
Oh, that would be a great way to turn it on its head.
Right.
But they don't do that. Everything is just very cookie cutter and it's just very, I don't want to say predictable. I don't even know that I think that's accurate, but I don't know that's what I'm going for. It's just very stale. It didn't surprise me once. There was nothing. It was fun. I had fun watching it. I had fun seeing Thrawn back. I had fun seeing Ezra back.
There were some good lightsaber battles. I will say, like episode 4 had some great lightsaber battles.
I think the Hayden stuff was awesome. I really liked that they used him, and I think that he did great. I love, as one of those kids who grew up with the prequel era of Star Wars, I don't think I'll ever complain about seeing Hayden Christensen in Star Wars again, but at the same time, it wasn't, there's so many things they could have done that would have been really interesting that they chose not to do. And that is just, it puts a damper on the whole thing when you think about the different ways they could have presented this planet. Maybe it's nighttime all the time. Things like that. Things like you were mentioning, gravity. Any way they could have done something with it. And the way that they present these characters. One thing I was thinking about while you were talking about how Ahsoka has lived a long life and we know all these versions of her and we've seen, not even versions, it's really been a lot of the same character in different scenarios. Right. But we've seen her through the Clone Wars. We've seen her through Rebels. We've seen her a little bit through Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, and we've seen her in Tales of the Jedi. We've seen baby Ahsoka. We've really seen every iteration. We've seen her throughout every stage of her life. Not to be that guy, but in 2017, a guy known by Ryan Johnson did something different with a character who was old and in his older stage of life, we had seen in every other stage of his life with The Last Jedi with Luke Skywalker. It was something fresh. It was new. Luke was grumpy. He didn't want to leave that island. This is a very similar thing to what you just suggested we could have done with Ezra. We could have made him not want to leave after all this work to find him.
Ahsoka could have been,
didn't want to leave.
Ahsoka could have been more reluctant to take Sabine back. Ahsoka could have been more reluctant to pursue Thrawn.
People change and they evolve. Yeah. It was, I don't know. It just didn't. And again, a lot of the reason to care for me, on a personal note, a lot of the reason that I was expected to care about this show is because I was ready to see Ezra and Thrawn again. And when I did, it was cool. I like what they did with both of those characters, frankly. I think that they definitely could have been given way more to do. But I think that Thrawn, I'm glad they didn't change the casting. I think his design is fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. I think that Ezra is perfect casting, and I'm really excited to see more of that guy, more of Iman Esfandi. Like, I'm excited to see him as Ezra more. However, after we saw them, it became clear, okay, Ezra's going to get home. Thrawn's probably going to get back to set up the future. And even when you know a predictable story is unfolding. This is something that we talked about in our creator review. Even when you know that a predictable story is unfolding, what makes it intriguing is the relationships between the characters who the story is happening to.
Yeah.
What makes it intriguing is seeing how one character reacts to the story happening to another character. What happens when another character dies? How does that affect the other characters around them? And I just didn't feel the interconnectedness between these characters. The only interconnectedness I felt was what I felt because I had seen Rebels, which again makes me think, how did people who haven't seen these characters before, how did they care about these guys?
And maybe it's disingenuous to say maybe Star Wars is big enough that it's fine that this show is an extension of an extension, and maybe that's where Star Wars is right now, and it just builds on itself, and it always has built on itself. But at the same time, each new thing should have something fresh about it and set new standards and explore new areas for these characters and the depth of their lives. And I just feel what makes Thrawn such a spectacular villain is you forget that he can lose. You're just dialed into his plan because it's ultimately terrifying.
So cunning, and he's so strategic. And he's so smart about it. He's not force sensitive. He doesn't have powers, but he can defeat the Jedi because he respects the Jedi, and he knows all about culture and society.
And you just send a battalion of stormtroopers, send a ship. We got them cornered. I'm going to look at my projector, and we got them cornered, and that's good. And just read the file. That's Anakin's old Padawan. Great. Don't want to underestimate that. Let's leave. Victory is ours today. There was no build. Yeah. I think back to the Amazing Rebels episode where Thrawn is holding the Hera's heirloom and figuring out.
I was really hoping you were going to bring that up. I was just about to bring that episode up. Yes.
Boom.
That's Thrawn.
I want menacing. I want gritting your teeth. Oh my God. That is the Thrawn that makes his character so unique. And
he's so terrifying in that episode because he knows the ins and outs of Hera, not only the ins and outs of Hera as a character, when he unveils that he knows. I actually, very recently, I went back and I rewatched this episode to show it to my dad, who I was watching Ahsoka with, who had not seen Rebels. I wanted to show him Thrawn before Thrawn appeared in Ahsoka. And we didn't watch the whole episode, but we watched that scene where Hera's pretending to be a native who doesn't speak much of English and it has no place in this war and just wants to be free. Hera's pretending to be that. And when he unveils, this is General Harrison Dula, because he's got his cocky lieutenant there who's going crazy. Let's just take her out. And he's this is General Harrison Dula. And all of a sudden he name drops her and you're like, oh, he knows who she is. And then he goes all into it, and he says, if you want to understand an enemy, you have to understand their culture, their art, their society. And he shows this heirloom and he explains why it's important to Hera, her family, and her culture. And then you're like, oh my God, this dude knows everything there is to know about Hera, and she's captured right now with no way to escape. She is screwed because this guy is so strategic, so smart, and so cunning that he had this all planned out and you didn't even know. I never got that with this Thrawn. I love Lars Mikkelsen's voice. I'm glad it was there, but I never got that from him.
What could have been interesting is if Ezra stayed and Thrawn found a way back by himself, and then it separates our characters. Thrawn is the bigger threat right now. We don't have time or Thrawn is the only way to get to Ezra now because he made it back. Something like that creates that same dilemma, but with Sabine and Thrawn and Ahsoka and Thrawn.
Yeah.
That has them actually, do they even look at it? I'm just thinking now, do they even come face to face at the end of the show?
Who? Thrawn and Ahsoka?
Do they look at each other?
No.
Oh my God.
I don't think they do. I watched the finale today. I don't think they do.
Doesn't he just get on the Star Destroyer and then Ezra, they do the jumpy thing?
I'm pretty sure he hops on a call while her...
He hops on a call?
Yeah, he hops on a call with her. He does. He hops on a call while her ship is behind his Star Destroyer and he's about to launch into hyperspeed. And he's like, well, I regret we never met face to face.
Oh my God, he does say that.
He says that.
Oh.
Yeah. And then he zooms off, and Ahsoka is seemingly stranded on this planet. But
it's supposed to be this forced intrigue thing just fixing with Baylan. That's something.
I think they're just fixing their ship. That's the other thing. What is Baylan up to? I would love to know just an inkling more of what he's doing, because that is such an interesting. He's the only character in this show that every time he was on the screen, I was like, what is he up to? I need to know what he's doing, because what he's doing. It's
fascinating. And he doesn't even hate Ahsoka, really.
No, he respects her. He is the way that I think Thrawn maybe should have been presented.
Mm-hmm. In a way.
In the sense of he respects his opponent, and he's scary. We don't know where he stands with all this stuff. Thrawn to me was always evil, but evil in such a scary way because he didn't hate the good guys. He respected them more than anything.
I would have loved to see more of his backstory. Like, I would have loved to see like them like tapping into their memories during a fight or something, and both shared memories and also things that differed about the Jedi Temple. Like again, and I think this is where animation would have been so much more successful here, is because we could jump around more. We could fill the show with more stuff. Like you can see on screen, like logistically, it's hard. You can see just how hard it is to pull some of this off. And that's not a knock on the show, because there are like some spectacular shots, some spectacular VFX, but just the whole package, I feel like it struggles to get like to the scale that it wants to get to.
Yeah. And that to me, and we'll talk about this on future episodes, I'm sure, but that to me makes me a bit fearful for not only season 2, but also this grand return to the big screen that Star Wars is supposed to have, with Dave Filoni at the helm, culminating the quote unquote Mandoverse in a big movie, which is the plan. We know, they've said. And it's like, with that, I don't feel like I'm going to care. I don't feel like I'm going to be super interested. And I've wanted Star Wars to be back on the big screen ever since it left. 4 years without it, obviously, is not that long of a time when you compare how the breaks in between all the trilogies. But knowing that they've been consistently putting out Star Wars shows for this entire time really makes you miss having Star Wars on the big screen when you've had The Mandalorian season 1, 2, and 3, when you've had the Book of Boba Fett, Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, now Ahsoka. When you've had all of these different TV outings, small screen outings, it really just makes you wish it was back on the big screen. And now our one big screen hope, because good Lord knows when Taika's going to finish his movie, our one big screen hope is in Dave Filoni, who has really not delivered anything amazing. Not that amazing is the bar.
In live action.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I'm a big Filoni fan in what he's done. And I think his writing for a lot of Ahsoka was pretty good. I think it could have used a little bit more, maybe a couple other people in the writer's room, maybe just different direction of the actors to make some of Filoni's ideas could be conveyed more clearly to the audience. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a little wary of the future with Star Wars after this.
It's a bit of a Star Wars stew right now. Like it's all boiling in a pot, and I'm hungry. I just don't know if it's ready yet.
Am I going to like it? Am I going to like it when it's done?
Do I need more seasoning?
Like you're looking at it.
Do I need more seasoning?
I don't hate all the ingredients. I just really I like it when it's finished.
Oh, dude, that's like the best analogy.
It is, because you're like, I don't hate it all. Some of it looks pretty, a lot of it looks pretty good. I've enjoyed a lot of it. I like a lot of the things you're putting in this stew, but also you're throwing in some things that are not really for me. But maybe it'll end up all right when it's all said and done. I don't know.
And maybe we had to accept that these shows are no longer for us. And I'm totally like game on that path.
It's a possibility. That is a possibility.
And that's fine. But it also breaks my heart because it's tied to shows. They continue to tell stories that are tied to the shows that we loved. You know what I mean?
And the movies and everything that means so much to us. Yeah. I think... And this is another thing.
Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about, because I'm also watching Gen V right now, the Boys spinoff show, which has had a phenomenal start across its first 4 episodes. If you haven't watched it, I very much recommend it. And it's interesting to me because it very much feels like The Boys, and it's their first attempt at expanding this quote unquote The Boys universe, which is, it's very ironic considering what The Boys is satirizing to begin with, but that's neither here nor there. This show's really good. And they're implementing a lot of different types of superheroes in Gen V, a lot of things that we haven't really gotten to see in The Boys, because The Boys restricts itself to these specific characters, and they're playing with the world and they're expanding it more. I think in the case of Star Wars, and I think you're starting to see it with Marvel too, but you're really seeing it with Star Wars, is when you've expanded the world so much, you're beginning to run out of room with what you can and can't do when you are adhering so strictly to the rules that you have set beforehand and to the timelines and the characters that you have set beforehand. And I don't know how much of that plays into this, but it's something that I thought about because in Gen V, they just introduced this TV host, Soup, who has a really cool, he's an interviewer. He's like an interrogator for gotcha journalism. And his superpower is he can sense when your heartbeat goes up, or he can see like a bead of sweat going down your face, or little things like that. He can pick up on and notice when you're lying or when you're nervous or anything like that. And that's interesting to me. And to me, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's cool. This is the first time if I'm not mistaken, that they've done like a TV host who is a Soup in the boys' world and played with that idea. Now they can't really do that again because they've got their TV host. They don't want to build another TV host in another show. And it's once you've checked all of these boxes, we have our archetype of this type of character that exists in this universe. Once you've checked all those boxes, to me, it's at a certain point, you begin to run out of room with things to do. And I feel like Star Wars may be reaching that point. And maybe it's not. Because there's a million things they could have done with this new...
The world is so big.
There's a million things they could go with, but it feels small.
Yeah.
They're making it feel smaller than it actually is.
And that's
a bummer.
Yeah. That's why Star Wars Visions has been like my favorite thing in the past 3 or 4 years they've done. Also, just the prospect of a show like The Acolyte being set nowhere near the existing timeline that we've seen in live action.
Solely just because of the timeline, I'm excited for that.
And so there's more room, to go back to what you're saying, to explore, even if it's similar dynamics, even if it's a Jedi and a Padawan. What does that dynamic look like when the Society of Jedi is developed in a completely, or not developed in a completely different way?
Drastically different way.
So there's room to grow because it's a different period of history. And so I wish Star Wars would start to play more lax with both the time period it takes place in and the adherence to stringing a story that has to tease the next thing together.
I think that's one of the biggest culprits of modern blockbuster filmmaking is what are we setting up next?
And just being owned by Disney.
Focus on that.
Being owned by Disney. Let's be honest. The entire ecosystem of Star Wars has been pushed forward and encouraged by the launch of Disney Plus, because let's be honest, they need shows, and they spent $4 billion on acquiring Lucasfilm, and it is an IP engine to them. And so they keep us subscribed. I'm still subscribed to Disney Plus because I'm going to watch Ahsoka and I want to watch Andor season 2. And there has to be the next thing. And because of that sort of push down from Disney, I feel that sometimes we've gotten to this little, just so much at once, and so much is going on, and so much of it is in TV that we haven't really been able to stop and consider overall what the movies are going to look like. And obviously we don't know the behind the scenes and the development of everything and all the pressures and all the storytelling aspects that go into these productions. But at the same time, we see the final things that come from the creativity and the overall business decisions that happen. And so it's just fascinating.
There's a place to say, we are the consumers. We are the people who you need us to watch your shows. Obviously, the two of us do not make up the entire populace that's watching Ahsoka. But at the same time, if this sort of energy begins to become a trend, if it becomes a more widespread feeling of just general discontentment, general disappointment with Star Wars, if that becomes a little bit more widespread, at a certain point, things have to change. And we've talked about it plenty on this podcast. Barbie and Oppenheimer doing what they did is a massive deal. And it because of how original those two films were. And I think audiences are craving more new things. And I think we're seeing that. I think at the same time, in the Star Wars fandom, in that realm, audiences get really mad about new things, as we've seen with The Last Jedi primarily. And so I think that Star Wars is at a bit of a crossroads here, because they want to build something new, but at the same time, they really want it to feel familiar. They're catering very much to the fans who have seen Rebels, who have seen Clone Wars, who are traditional Star Wars fans. A lot of what they've done is catering to those fans. But at the same time, when you cater too much to people who only want the same thing that they've already seen, you're going to begin to lose a really large audience of people who may be becoming interested in Star Wars for the first time,
Right.
or what have you. And I don't know. It's all very interesting. I'm interested to see where it goes. Carson, final thoughts on Ahsoka?
Yeah, I think we got it all out there for the most part, and went a little longer than we said we were going to go. This is the length of a normal
we're
episode.
going to make this a special episode and make it only 30 minutes.
And look where we are now.
Here we are.
I think just overall, I'm excited to see and maybe that's in vain of where season 2 is going to go, if it improves on itself, if this overall trajectory into this sort of movie that's going to tie up all these loose ends that are like 10 years in the making. Whatever that turns out to be, I could be eating my words. And I hope to be, because Star Wars is an awesome thing, and I still love reading Star Wars stories, watching Star Wars stories, and I will continue to do so because I think there's always going to be fresh and innovative ideas. It's just a matter of getting them told and finding a medium that works for them and finding an artist who wants to tell them. And I think they're going to continue to do that. It's just a matter of execution and judging each project for what it is. And I think we've done that. And yeah, I can see myself rewatching this show in a year and seeing how it holds up for me. I couldn't say that about the Book of Boba Fett, so I guess that's a positive.
I think you hit it on the money. For me, at the end of the day, I like Star Wars, and I am a Star Wars fan, regardless of how cynical I may come across about some of these movies, these shows. And yes, I do think that they could be better. A lot of them. Book of Boba Fett, you just mentioned. I really am not a fan of that show, but I'm a fan of Star Wars, if that makes sense. I think that Book of Boba Fett could be a lot better. I think Ahsoka could have been better. I think it could have stuck the landing better, but I'm a fan of Star Wars, and I will prefer my least favorite Star Wars over most other things in terms of what I like. Do I think it could be better? Yeah. Do I like watching it? Also, yeah. And it's just, I think that's just where I stand on most Star Wars things that don't land for me. Is I am still a fan of this, and I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it because I like Star Wars, and this still is Star Wars. And because of that, I still like to watch it. Will I rewatch it? I don't know. Will I watch the next one? Yeah, because I like Star Wars. Do I think it could be a lot better? Yeah. Am I watching TV shows that are a lot better? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I still just like it. I don't know. I just like it. And that's just kind of where I'm at with Ahsoka. Is I liked it. I had fun. I'll watch the second season. I'll watch the dang movie. I hope I like it more. I hope I think it's better. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it. But I think that's going to wrap us up for this special episode of Zollypod that did not run the predetermined special length that we were going to have it run for 30 minutes. Maybe let us know if you did listen to this whole thing. Let us know what you think about our special episodes. Would you like these to be full length like all the other ones? We're wanting to do these a little bit more with reviews of certain things or just current events that are going on, and keep our longer episodes to broader topics every now and then, and focusing a little bit more on our guests. These special episodes, we definitely want to keep doing these. Would you like them to be this length? Would you like them to be 30 minutes? Do you care at all? It doesn't matter if they just let us know, because we can bend it however. But yeah, that's my.
Did you like our ingredients of this episode?
Did you
put our analogies back on us? Roast us, if you will.
Would you eat the stew, or do you want a different stew? Do you want something else, some more ingredients in there? Let us know. Me personally, as long as it doesn't have squash or zucchini, I'll be good. Those are my least favorite, personally. You should follow the podcast at Zollypod, Zollypod, all social medias, and turn on that bell icon if you haven't yet to subscribe and see when we drop our next episode, and we will see you at the movies.